Welcome to ViViMaT. This is the first part of the Q&A session where we'll discuss the presentations of Gabriele Losi and Raisa Rudge right after this message. Codings is a peer-reviewed journal of codings and surface engineering published online by MDPI on a monthly basis. Well, I'd like to welcome all of you. Thanks very much for showing up, all of you. Almost all of you, but I'm sure Raisa's going to show up. A couple of you got questions in the comment section, and sometimes people are just a little bit too shy to actually leave the questions there. So they will just, I don't know, email them or something like that. But fear not, we have questions for all of you. Some easy, some very difficult, some just very interesting. But it should all be a very friendly discussion, yeah? So it's all, no harm intended. So I think I'd like to hand it over to Carsten. Yeah, and thank you very much for turning off your mics while it's not your turn, because otherwise we'd have a horrible, I mean, we've all been through this for over a year now, so I think we know how it works. So I'm going to turn down my mic. The only thing that I know already is that Gabriele has to go away within about an hour. So we're going to definitely take him as one of the first three. And then maybe Zhang also would like to go to bed at some point, maybe. Yeah? So we'll also have him in the first half, and then let's see how it goes. And the Americans will just have to sit it out until the end.
At the very end, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks, first of all, Stefan, for doing a great job. I think we have not seen us yet, but I'm Carsten. I'm the professor in tribology at TU Wien, and Stefan is within my team. So Stefan, again, very much appreciated what you did. Excellent presentation of the speakers, and I also really enjoyed like the last time when your kids were jumping up and down and mentioning the titles. So this was really cool, and I really enjoyed that. And thanks again to our speakers. So you were all really wonderful, and I enjoyed watching your presentations. So for today, don't be scared. It's just easy going. There are no really severe questions. We are not going to punish you in the internet for whatever. So it is rather easy going. We have a couple of questions. I would like to also use the opportunity maybe to ask you about your experience with these kind of platforms. Not sure how many of them you have used so far for conferences, other workshops or seminars, or is this the first one that you joined? So a little bit off topic from the scientific issue, but discussing with you your experiences or whatever you think could be better in the future, what to skip, what could be improved. And another point I would like to discuss with some of you who have maybe not received tons of questions is where she or he sees your topic in the future, which are open research questions, which things you are going to do next in your topic. A little bit easy chatting, I would say. And as Stefan said before, I'm pretty sure we can handle it within 2 hours. And as some of you, of course, have restrictions like Sangju in Beijing with the bedtime, but also Gabriele, who said before that he might be busy with something else afterwards. Yeah, I think I can start maybe. Stefan, if you agree with Gabriele, I can also see that Raisa has now arrived. So welcome, Raisa, to our Q&A session. I hope you're doing fine, because it's pretty late in Australia. So welcome, and thanks for joining at a very late time. So maybe we can start with Gabriele, and of course with Raisa, that she can also go to bed at a reasonable time still. Yeah, we have a couple of questions. Some of them we have received by mail, some of them we actually thought of, and others just left some comments and questions in the on the channel page. So maybe to start with Gabriele, there was a question about actually how could, I just reading what I got, how could the fireworks workflow manager interact with LAMPS, and would LAMPS be called as a library, or how can I imagine that? So this was one of the questions that we received, or was even raised by Stefan, I guess.
Actually, that was me, because that was something that intrigued me. And of course, I think you mentioned lamps in there somewhere, but at least I know that it should be possible. So that is one question that would really interest me for mere practical reasons. Yeah. Do you have anything on that? How that works?
Yeah. So, hi everyone. So I'm the first one. So um, I have to calm down a little bit, but yeah, I know that this should be quite informal, but so let's start to answer to your question. So yeah, in principle, if you use Fireworks, you have the possibility to manage all of these complicated workflows, right? So, but what you do with Fireworks is with this package which is made by the Person group, you basically are just working with the hardware or with the handling of the database and all of the stuff that are under the hood of the software implementation. In order to perform the simulations, we use Automate, which is, of course, still developed by the Person group, which is basically a collection of basic workflows that can be used in order to perform, for instance, VASP simulations. And there is a module that can be used for lamps, actually. In truth, I think that it is no more developed since 2018. So, as far as I knew, it is not more maintained. But of course, it is present, and it also employs PyMageN in order to create these basic workflows and fire tasks that can be used in order to just to run lamps simulations, to retrieve data, to store them in the database, prepare the inputs, and so on. So in principle, using this Automate package, you are capable to wrap lamps and call it within possibly a workflow. And I knew also that Automate is now to be completely rewritten from scratch, basically. So a new version is coming, and I hope and I think that a lot of changes will be done in this new version. So probably also lamps, it would be much easier to be used within a workflow of this kind.
Thanks, Gabriele, for this. Where do you actually see your work in the? I mean, where are you now located? Are you in the beginning of your PhD or mid of PhD, or have you already finished it?
I am at the third year of the PhD, so I'm going to finish in November. So okay. the 1st of November, the PhD is ended, and then the final PhD defense, the discussion will be held probably at the beginning of the next year. So from February to April, it depends on how many people are present.
Yeah, perfect, great. Maybe another question, but I think Stefan is also back again, and we can
Sorry
hear
for dropping out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Stefan, maybe Stefan, you can also ask your second question, or one of the second questions that was given to Gabriele.
So I don't know the first thing about ab initio, basically, no pun intended. But so why is there a gap in your periodic table of your high throughput studies at manganese? I can understand the technetium somehow that you don't do that because it's of no practical use. But manganese, why? It would be
interesting. That's an interesting question, because so the first study that we did with our software was related only to the elements, so basically almost all the bulks of the periodic table. Of course, manganese is missing, but that's due to the quite complicated structure that it possesses, because indeed, so there are many phases, many structures that manganese can have, and the most stable one, which is the alpha manganese, it is a cubic cell, so it should be a BCC if I remember correctly, but it has 58 atoms within the cell. So when we first built our first version of the software, we weren't able to deal with such a complicated structures. So we basically were able only to work with FCC, BCC, diamond structures, and HCP. And for the first three, so for the cubic structures, we studied the 001, 110, and 111 orientations, while for the latter, so the HCP, only the 0001. Now with the new version, I think that also, of course, with new implementation, new changes, new debug, that it has still to be done, of course, in order to see if everything works correctly with such complicated structure. But the final goal is to being able to work with any kind of structure, so also manganese, and also other structures such as bulk and slabs with as a non-monatomic basis. So more than one species in the cell.
It makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah, I have no feeling whatsoever for what is difficult in ab initio, because it's not just size. It's usually also tricky things like, I don't know, magnetism or yucky things like that. Well, thank you very much. I think we're gonna maybe move on to the next person to see if we even have enough time, because now it's already 1/4 and who knows. So Raisa, are you still, so thank you very much, Gabriele. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Raisa, are you still awake? Are you still available?
Yeah, I'm kind of awake. Now I had a power nap. So I should be good to go.
Yeah. I told Raisa that I like her voice so much that she should do audiobooks. Yeah. I don't know. Do you do audiobooks yet? Not yet.
But you know, I'm currently unemployed, so
maybe that would be an alternative path, yeah. Anyway, so I don't know if you knew, but I put Raisa's talk online last night. She already has a couple of hits on that talk, but I watched her talk this morning just to make sure that one of us had seen it at the time of this recording. And I have a couple of easy ones, I would say. And so the first thing is, now that I've heard about the alum, my grandmother used to give me this when I had little ouchies in my mouth. So now I know why my spit went all gloopy then. Yeah. So but it doesn't dry your mouth out. It just makes everything gloppy, right? So you used human saliva. Who donated? And I mean, you don't just spit in there yourself, right? So,
yes.
And the second question related to that is, how much variability is there between different kinds of human saliva?
Yeah, so just first about the alum. So basically what it does, so it binds to different salivary proteins, and then the proteins aren't able to lubricate your mouth anymore, so it feels completely dry. And if it feels chunky, it's because you have the aggregates between the alum and the proteins present on your tongue. So yeah, not a great feeling. Luckily, alum is not actually a food. It's used. It has some medicinal uses or pharmaceutical uses. And then for the saliva, yeah, actually, it is just donated by students, people around the lab. So there is quite some variability. So we did our pilot studies just with one donor, which would often be the one doing the experiments. And then when we went to like upscale it and really, trying to get actual results, we did use saliva of multiple people as well. So we compared saliva of one donor compared to saliva of what they call pooled, so like 30 people, I believe, and we actually got very similar results.
Okay, so you actually had like a spittoon as well. So
pretty much, yes. I happily outsourced that part of the work.
Great. And another question that I had, so when I first saw that you actually use as your measure, you use the absolute increase in the coefficient of friction. So I thought that's definitely one possibility. Why not relative, or does it just not make any difference? Is one as good as the other?
That's quite interesting. Yes, we could have used relative as well. I think we had a look at it and it wasn't very different. Because we're measuring as a base, so we're first measuring saliva, then adding the astringent, the wine or whatever, and then it increases but the basic that we got for saliva was often quite similar. So
Yeah.
I think that's why we stuck to the absolute values.
So I guess the qualitative ranking and stuff would have remained the same, but since one is sort of like one is like a ratio and the other's a difference, they may have looked a little bit different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and one last one I had when you mentioned that alcohol is actually also good. So I know Carsten likes a glass of wine, and so do I, but we actually prefer whiskey. So the thing is, so whiskey has, I drink whiskeys up to like, I don't know, 65% if they're cask strength. So I was thinking maybe next whiskey night, should we add some glycerol, or would that just be overdoing it? And how do you think it would add to the mouthfeel?
Yeah, so I'm myself not a big whiskey drinker, but do you usually perceive your whiskey as astringent?
Well, some of them are. There are some that have been in sherry cask for very long. They're usually very dark, and those are like tannin bombs. And those,
Right, exactly.
they make your tongue curl up, and others don't. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so that's the thing. So what we indeed found, at least with wine, so we haven't done the study with whiskey, but so wine also has tannin similar to whiskey, and we found that the more alcohol is present in the wine, the less astringent it already is. So if your whiskey is already at 65% and it's still astringent, then it's definitely, like you said, a tannin bomb. What you can try as maybe a sort of at-home experiment, maybe try some honey, because that has quite a viscous lubricating effect as well. Yeah, otherwise, yeah, it's quite interesting to me actually that at 65% it's still able to be astringent. But yeah, perhaps some honey or some syrup, something quite viscous. I'm quite curious, and to kind of clarify, so we did most of these measurements in an actual turbometer. We haven't really done the human sensory studies, so that would be an interesting comparison as well.
So can I get on one of your papers then, if I if I do this?
We can do a whiskey tasting, and then if you do the tribological work, and I'll bring the whiskey.
Right. So last one.
Yeah.
So yesterday you told me that you're actually already a long-serving influencer on Instagram, right? So
Yes.
just like half a minute on that. I mean, you showed me the video; it was hilarious. But so maybe we have to put it in the somewhere below the video to link to your Instagram account.
So yeah, so that would be nice. So to explain what I've been doing on Instagram, so I've always been a bit fascinated by graphic design, video editing, stuff like that, and I also have a passion for doing really random experiments. So at some point I realized that my Instagram, just like everyone else's, is filled with holiday pictures and pictures of food and stuff like that. And I thought, well, as a PhD, as a scientist working in a lab, I have a little bit more that I can bring to the rest of the world. So in 2018, I started filming little videos about really maximum 1 minute and just explaining some basic concepts. So I started just with slime, the usual stuff kids play with, and explain the rheological properties, what are polymers, what are gels. I've done the transition in cheese melting, for example. Some cheeses melt, like Dutch cheeses usually melt, but then stuff like halloumi doesn't melt, and I explain that. And just fun things. So the group I'm aiming at are my, for example, cousins and aunts that I have on Facebook. I'm like, if they can understand it, then that is the goal that I kind of want to achieve. So yeah, if you're interested in that, you can find it on Instagram by using #PhysicsFriday. And I usually try posting every Friday. Now that I'm not actively working in the lab anymore, it's a bit less frequent. But if you should look up #PhysicsFriday on Instagram, you should be able to find some of my experiments.
Well, that's great.
Cool.
And yeah, congratulations again to your PhD. I was there and I got kicked out during the questions, which is why I don't have any more in-depth questions for you.
Thank you very much for joining, Dan. Thank you.
Yeah.